I think Delmar said this, and I think it was a good transition to the next question. You were talking about like, I think either Jeff or Delmar said like, oh, the reason why they're not available is because they have a bunch of kids. Well, the next question's about kids, and I think it's
these are very
question.
connected questions.
Yeah. So, what policies or procedures do you have for pastors with multiple young children under 3 with whose wives serve on Sunday morning as well? Do your churches allow your pastors to be husbands and fathers first, or do they expect them to be present with the congregation and allow their wives to take the full brunt on Sunday morning? For example, do they expect you to be completely focused on shaking every hand and listening to every story and butterflying around to everyone instead of being allowed to give attention to your own kids? Now, let me say this. I've never heard the word butterflying like that before. That's kind of I kind of like that.
It makes sense. You're fluttering around.
Yeah. I though I would say
I just think of the Reading Rainbow.
Yeah.
Butterfly in the sky. I can fly twice as high.
I never heard the term, but I knew exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good word. So,
I butterfly.
Tim, you have 5 kids.
5 kids.
Andrew, you have
3
4
kids.
I was about to say, what happened?
You have 4.
Yesterday you had 4.
We had an accident. It's fine.
Oh, no.
Don't name names.
We had an accident. That's why.
Like, you just so nonchalant said 3. I'm like, he's joking. Oh, he's serious.
Jeff and Del, you guys have kids, but I mean, Jeff, does Amy serve in the church on Sundays?
Bro, Amy runs his church. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Bro, if every ministry I've ever had, if I left, people would be like, "Oh man," but if Amy left, devastation. Like, she has way more relational capital than me. But yeah, she runs our children's ministry.
Yeah. And I know, like Tim, like you were telling me that like Stephanie was like, can I help you with baptism? Because you're a mess. Because there was like issues with baptisms and stuff. So
administrative help in baptisms, yes.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have any kids, but my wife is wanting to serve more at the church. But can you guys answer this question? Like, there's this common issue, especially in smaller churches, where, I mean, that's not true. In big churches is an issue too, where like the pastor's wife is expected to be like free staff, you know, and I always try to communicate and over communicate. My wife's only responsibility to this church is to be my wife. If she does anything else, that's icing on the cake for the church. But how do you feel like your church handles this issue, or what advice would you give this pastor about his wife and his family?
Frank, I agree with you. And we covered this when we were in the hiring process with our staff over the last 15 months. And actually had to sit an elder down because he had said to one of our people interviewing, now just so you know, your wife's going to be in on this with you. And I did sit the elder down and I said, actually, in a sense, yes, the wife's here and present, but we are not hiring his wife. We're hiring him. And if she chooses to do anything to serve in any ministry, great. We'll support her in that way. If her ministry is to make sure the family is getting to church on time on a Sunday morning, great. Like that's what needs to happen. Early on in ministry, when I was in youth ministry,
that is a ministry in and of itself.
It's a huge ministry.
Because
it's a huge ministry.
When dad leaves early,
yes,
that means that mom's getting 4 kids. Got it right that time.
That's the correct number.
Out of bed and dressed and deodorized now that they're a little bit older and
yeah. I would say it'd probably be fun to address this question again with our wives, so it's not just us speaking on their behalf. I would love to get their perspective on this as well. I can tell you early on in ministry, Stephanie was really my right hand. She did everything with me. We served alongside each other. She was a small group leader. And when we went from 2 to 3 kids and then to 4 and to finally 5, by the time we hit 3 kids, we realized right now is not the right season of life for her to be serving in youth ministry with me. We just didn't have the time or the capacity to do that, plus try to figure out childcare on a weekly basis. So she bowed out of serving in a lot of areas. She's found other spots to serve, but I'll speak from my own experience. I don't know how you guys have been, but on Sunday mornings, Stephanie is a single mom, and she knows that. We have talked through this. She understands that. I leave early. I am out of the house before anybody wakes up on a Sunday morning. So when it comes to our morning routine, usually I'm very involved. Breakfast, backpacks, all of those things, whatever I can do to help, I'm involved. But on Sunday mornings, I'm not. But they have me the rest of the week. Like that's the thing. Like a lot of dads, they don't get to help out Monday through Friday. I do get to help out Monday through Friday. So yes, on Sundays, Stephanie is a single mom and she has to get the kids to church, and it's a chore They're not always on time. People have made not so kind comments before that were very hurtful. And that's unfortunate. And that is a casualty of war when it comes to ministry families. And we've had to work through different issues like that in the past.
Put them out of the church, Tim.
I was church discipline.
Kick him
but
out.
There's no expectation. Like there was no expectation on Stephanie to have to do anything that's not in her comfort zone. So hopefully you have that as well. But I want to be careful here because I understand that you do still want to be present on Sunday morning. But if your main job is the Sunday morning service, which as the lead pastor, that's part of my job. Yeah, I'm heavily focused on the congregation. And Steph usually gives me about 15 minutes after after the service before she sends the kids. So I know it's my time to go when my two youngest come and grab my leg. Like they'll wrap around my leg, like, Dad, we're hungry. And then I'll break away from my conversation. Like, yep, we're going to go eat as a family. And then I'll roll out. But she typically gives me that time and understands. But I try to make up for that. Like the rest of the week, I know I can be more present in my kids' lives than a lot of dads. But on Sunday mornings, yeah, I'm heavily focused on the congregation.
I think there needs to be an understanding that, yes, my wife is gifted, and yes, there are certain things that she can do to serve the church. But having her serve in that capacity means that I'm going to have to, and unless somebody else is going to like, hey, I will take your kids or I will do this. And my parents worship with us. My boys are getting older, so things are easier now. But there was a time where we had 4 kids, kindergarten and under, at church, and I was expected to do all kinds of things. And the answer there was, that's fine. I can do those things. You cannot ask my wife to do anything. The other side of that is that and this was at my previous church, because there were not a ton of the younger families at the later service, we kind of created a clubhouse in my office, and all of the young families would hang out in my office. And it was a big office. There were a couple of couches and a recliner and stuff. And so my office kind of became the de facto Sunday school room for the young parents in the church. And this is a place that, moms can take their shoes off. There's kids on the floor. There's Cheerios all over the place, because there was an understanding that, okay, if we're going to have a parent be expected to do things, we need to make allowances for the kids. And as my kids have gotten older, what that's turned into is now my office is still the clubhouse, but now it's the clubhouse for all of the adolescents in the church. So now while the parents, we do the big fellowship hall time after service. And so while the parents are sitting around drinking coffee and chit-chatting with one another, we'll have 7 or 8 kids playing Roblox or doing whatever in my office, because my office is seen as it's the place where my kids get to hang out. And since they get to hang out in there, they get to have their friends in there as well. So I think there needs to be something with the spouses in the church where, hey, if something is going to be asked of you, this is going to be given, like whether it's leeway for dad to step in or somebody else to step in. But there also needs to be privileges for the pastor's family, not like special treatment, but hey, because dad is on staff, because dad's a pastor, because dad's the youth pastor, we get to hang out and do things that other kids wouldn't get to do at the church. Sometimes that means like my kids got to have a birthday party in the fellowship hall. Well, I probably wouldn't do that for someone that's been coming for 3 or 4 months. My kids have a place where they can plug in their devices and charge them during church because dad has an office. So there are perks that I think the pastor's family should get, because we hear all these things about pastors' kids growing up and resenting the church. I would rather be a C- preacher whose kids grow up to love Jesus than be Spurgeon and have kids resent the church. So
wow,
we need to do whatever we can do to make church as easy as possible for the pastors' families.
Yeah, he specifically asked what policies and procedures. We don't have any written policies or procedures. It's a very well understood thing that doesn't happen. I will say, if you're interviewing into a church, you need to state that up front. Listen, you want a bad version of me? Wear out my wife. You know what I'm saying? Make her feel like I'm never home. Obligate her to do things. My wife, there's no guilt or obligation. We had a thing at church last night, and she goes, okay, I'll be there right beforehand. And on Sundays, my wife knows she doesn't see me. I go in the morning, and I'm not home. I do not come home generally till 8 p.m. And she was like, okay, I'll be there at this time. And I just told her, I said, I know you. Nothing about this event jazzes with you. I think you should stay home and just let me come get the kids, and you just stay home. And she was really she needed that. And I think that it's okay to, like, if there are no policies, then guess what, Pastor? You're the policy maker. You're you fence the things she's required to go to. And one of the things, and I have had to work through this even in my marriage, is sometimes you can unstatedly make her feel like you want her there. Because sometimes as pastors, let's be honest, there's certain things I want my wife to go to, and sometimes she will, but sometimes there's things we want them to go to. They don't have to go to them. And I think it's okay to, like, suck it up and say, I'll handle this one on my own.
I'd rather she go to all the meetings I have to go to.
Yeah, honestly. Honestly, but seriously, that's just kind of where it's at. That goes back honestly to the conversation in the first half, and that is it's a culture thing. I do find one hack. I don't know if you want to call it that, but like that some pastors' wives do. My wife does serve in children's ministry, and it's a low commitment ministry because we have like once every 8-week rotation over there. But I'm able to be like, well, she's working in the kids ministry or doing something. If she's just not involved in anything at all, it's a little harder. Granted, she could. Well, we also have members at our church. If you're here and you're a member of our church, you are expected to serve out of the gifting the Lord has given you. That's a blanket statement for every member of our congregation. So our wife should be serving. But if she has that place where she is serving, it's easier to say no to other things.
Yeah, I would just say my wife serves as children's ministry. She's never had the identity as being the pastor's wife. She's always had her own role. We've been on staff at churches multiple times, and she's always been the children's director, and I always had my role. So there was not that dynamic until we came here. Our dynamic on Sundays is a little strange because I lead worship and preach typically, and she's in charge of children's ministry. But it is a culture thing, and I have to brag on my church a little bit. My church does not have a culture where they expect my wife to do things just because she's the pastor's wife. All of her like expectations at this church are self-imposed, meaning like she felt called to children's ministry and started the children's ministry, and that was a huge asset to us because it didn't have one when I came, and so it needed it. And she's incredibly gifted administratively and as a teacher, and relationally she's probably more gifted. I definitely think she's more gifted than I am. And a big chunk of her ministry at our church is actually informal, unofficial relationships she has with some of the other women here in like a mentoring role that don't really feel like a mentoring role, but it is. And so on. So, I mean, yesterday we had our 3-year-old is having a discipline issue right now, and she was kind of out of control. And so my wife had to grab her up and take her home and bring her back a little bit later. And, just to brag on my church, it's full of basically extra aunts and uncles and a few grandmas and grandpas. And they are incredible with my kids. And I don't think my kids feel any kind of way about they're the pastor's kids. And I don't feel like there's any expectation from anybody that I have to like come and shake their hand before I pick up my 3-year-old or my 6-month-old that's with us right now and be a dad first. So, I hope you end up in a church like that. And it is culture. What's the saying? Culture eats policy for breakfast. You can have all the policies you want. I don't know if I said that quote right, but I think I did.
Sounds delicious.
You can have all the policies. Is it lunch? I don't remember.
It doesn't matter. It was a good.
Anyway,
we get it.
You can have all the policies you want, but if you have a culture of impossible expectations, people will find loopholes in your policy and figure out a way to impose those expectations on you and your wife. So, it's really about finding a church and hopefully creating a church that has the culture that says families are really important and our pastor is a husband and a father first.